Samurai Champloo. You know what? I actually have a story to this one. It's not really long at all, I promise. It's just like, 2 seconds or maybe a minute or less, probably. Just before I get to my thoughts about Samurai Champloo. But my story, I probably have to say, is I think I've seen Samurai Champloo 3 times, right? My bad, 4 times. 4 separate times. The first time I watched it was when I was extremely young, and honestly, I can't really interpret it as well as I would right specifically now, or at least 5 years ago. And then after that, I had tried to rewatch it 2 to 3 more times, and I don't know what it was, but I couldn't necessarily get through it. I don't know, I just kept watching the first, I believe, 2 to 3 episodes, and I would just stop. I don't know specifically why, or it was for this moment, for this video right now, but after completing it for the second time, I could actually tell you this is peak fiction. And I know that people they might complain about the ending, but I do not care. It's still peak. And even a small part of my brain, really fast, even a small part of my brain was like, yo, you dead ass? Like, are they actually alive? But I was like, you know what, I'll let it slide. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. But let me get to the story before I get to all my likes about what I did like about this. The story first started with a character by the name of Fu, and now she's just serving into a restaurant, right? And as she's serving in this restaurant, she's just serving dumplings, a whole bunch of thugs sort of come in, as well as the Shogun's son. And the Shogun's son is with all these thugs, and they started just making a whole huge ruckus inside this restaurant, just being complete assholes and basically just fucking up the whole restaurant. Then you see this character by the second main character by the name of Mugan. Mugan comes into the restaurant as well, and he has a vibe to him. He has an aura specifically with him when you see him. Now he's dumber than a bag of bricks, but he can't tell in a situation if something is going awry or something's going wrong or someone needs help. And Mugan basically tries to bargain with Fu, saying, hey, I'll help you, but you gotta give me 100 dumplings. At first she's like, no, and then they start messing around and she's like, okay, yes. And then he basically helps them out by just like straight up slashing all the samurai that are inside of there. And the kid is like, hey, what are you doing? These are like people that are with the Shogun, or I'm with the Shogun himself. If you continue to do this, you will be executed. He's like, I don't give a shit. After Mugan is finished helping everyone, he actually gets captured a little bit later on. But going back to the restaurant, at the same time all that's happening with Mugan, there's also a character by the name of Jin that gets introduced, and he actually sees the Shogun himself, and he actually goes down and cuts down his samurai because one of the farmers that was there was trying to pay him, but he didn't have enough. So he actually wanted him to be murdered because he didn't have enough money. So this is the point where Jin actually steps in, and he actually kills all of the samurai that are in the location, and then he just walks away, but then he gets captured as well. But as both of them are about to be executed, Fu actually comes in to help support and save them, and they both go onto a trip of finding the Sunflower Samurai. But after a coin flip, that is actually won, and Fu says, hey, time to go find the Sunflower Samurai. You guys can't fight or kill each other until I find this samurai. I feel like that was a little bit rushed, but that's okay. I feel like this is like one of the best or most perfect first episodes I think I've ever seen, especially in the terms of anime or just like any animation in general. I feel like it gives you a strong grasp on each character in themselves. Either way you want to talk about Jin, you see Jin is sort of like a very noble samurai who wants to help the needy when they're in need, or to kill the unjust when they're out and about. And then you have Mugan just showing you how, one, stupid he is when he came in and do basic math, and two, how arrogant or how uncaring he is to the society itself when it comes to either the Shogun or him just straight up killing people just for the simple thing of food. Then there's Fu, who by all intents and purposes should have left both the samurai there to die, but she intends to help them and be extremely compassionate in her actions, even though it is for herself. But it is what it is. Starting with the positives, I think I really want to talk about Fu. Fu is the definition of the compassionate queen. I feel like she is so compassionate throughout this whole series. She thinks about others from a completely different perspective, and just not only just sitting in her own perspective, because it's extremely easy for someone to go and look at their perspective and not think about someone's other or how they're feeling or what they're going through, and just think about yourself. It's way too easy to do it. But not for Fu. She thinks about others. She actually thinks about what they're feeling or what they're going through, or when she has clarity on a situation, she still has that inherent feeling of, I feel bad for you, even when you shouldn't be. Kind of like, if I dare say, the compassion of humanity, where she's compassionate to, I believe, 3 specific people in the story. And one of the first ones I wanted to go over was Wakumaru, right? Wakumaru was a man who necessarily wasn't put in prison because he started slaughtering all these people. Now, the reason why he did slaughter all these people, I believe, is because he was looked down upon. He was looked down upon because he was so ugly. Everyone just either laughed at him, was scared of him, made fun of him, or said a snarky remark to him all the time. And there was a time where he got fed up and he just lashed out on everybody. So we fast forward to the point where Mugan is actually fighting this guy, and he actually stops. He actually stops attacking Mugan, and he just looks straight up at Fu, because Fu never inherently looked down upon him, never made fun of him, never did anything negative to him in connotation. Only positive things were ever treated when it came to the relationship of him and Fu. And he just straight up lets Mugan cut him down in a more or less heart-wrenching scene. And then there's a second time where I think is with Morinobu. Now Morinobu is basically a struggling artist who's out there painting other women for money, but also in the same breath, he's at the same time giving these women away to go to like a slave trade-esque situation. And this is a situation where basically Fu gets betrayed because she actually gives trust into this guy, and he inherently puts her into the slave trade-esque situation, but it tends to save her. He doesn't really want to do this anymore, and especially when he sees Fu, he doesn't want her to go through that situation. And even in the end of things, Fu still doesn't inherently want him to be put to harm or have anything bad happen to him. And the last situation, which is clearly the most saddest one, which is the Sunflower Samurai. Now, spoiler alert for this old ass anime. Go ahead, I don't know why I'm saying spoilers now, but go ahead, if you haven't watched this, go watch Samurai Champloo. Cut your ass back in here. But the last one, the Sunflower Samurai, is hands down the most saddest one, because it's come to find out that when she inherently gets to the Sunflower Samurai, what she's been going to try to do this whole time, he's actually her father. And her father actually wanted to be in the part of their lives. He wanted to be a part of her life when she was growing up. He wanted to be with his wife. He wanted to actually be a family. But as you can already tell from Fu's perspective, for someone that hasn't been in your life your whole life, you would just treat them with extreme vile intention or extreme vile reaction, is what something that she does do. But what happens is she actually just straight up starts to forgive him a little bit, and even, dare I say, be glad that she even met him or even got a chance to have a conversation before he was about to die. She was able to do something that most people can't have the ability to do, the ability to forgive someone. Looking someone in their eyes, knowing that they're in the complete wrong and you're in the complete right, and saying it's okay. Next up I want to talk about is Jean. I think the best way to easily describe Jean is the saying of the Ronin that is longing for belonging. I feel like for every single character that they definitely have a place where, like, if they could literally just stay there, or I could see them staying there and the show just either ending there for them, or they like choose to stay there for the rest of the time in some episodes instead of continue their journey. But I think this best describes for Jean specifically. Jean always seems like the person that necessarily he's looking to belong somewhere. He's always felt like even way back when in his past, when he first was in a dojo and he had his master as well as all of his other students that were around him, he himself necessarily felt like he was an outcast. He was a Ronin all the way back then. So by the time you get to the end of the series, it's really interesting looking back onto what Jean was doing, him trying to fit into certain allocations, or him trying to settle down, or him trying to right a wrong specifically that was going on. Because I can tell you firsthand, ladies and gentlemen out there, that trying to fit in, not wanting to be alone, is a really sucky feeling. Just having that feeling of being alone, having no one to necessarily lean on, no one to really talk to, no one to connect with, no one to converse with. Looking for bonds, family, friendship that you can call your own and make new experiences and grow from them. Just a stagnant, depressing feeling that you don't really wish upon other people. With one of the episodes to back up my claim, and it got even better after I finished the series and understand him as a character by the end of things, but still a really good episode just alone, is the episode where necessarily Jin is talking to this woman that he's supposed to sell this cook to ill to, because he's actually doing side jobs to get money, which happens a lot in this series basically. But he's selling ills to this woman, and she can tell this is going to taste like shit because he's doing it completely wrong. So she helps him out all day to actually get him like good eels to sell to people, and then come to find out her husband actually sold out to a prostitution ring, because sadly that's the type of time period that we live in, the Edo period. Oh, at least it's, I believe it's the Edo period, at least it's the era of the samurai, bare minimum. And when the woman leaves to go to this house, Jean actually visits her multiple times, saying how much he basically wants to be with her, and basically says I love her without really saying I love her. But I feel like his ultimate confession of saying I love you is when he basically frees her from the prostitution ring. He grabs her and takes her across the boat to another island or the other side of the lake to where she can be free. And when I saw this episode, it made me just question and just in sadness of like, is he actually going to find or feel happiness? Is he going to find a way to belong or where to be in life? And I feel like he does. He does with the other two, which is Mugan as well as Fu. He has that kind of look on his face so does Mugan, right? Because they don't say anything by the time they get to the end of the trip. The only person that says anything is Fu. She expresses herself extremely emotionally, where she says, I want to miss you guys, I really don't want to leave, I actually want to continue going on an adventure with you guys, but she has to inherently go meet this Sunflower Samurai. The reason I know specifically when it came to Mugan and Jin of them having that feeling is not only the look on their faces, but they don't refute it. They don't say anything back in negative connotation. They just listen in silence and accept of what she said. And one of the reasons why that's so alarming is because they are usually both the type to say something, whether it just be of like, wait, what are we doing? Or that sounds really stupid. Or they'll leave her. It's just nothingness. It's just listening and actually letting things sink in for the situation what it really is. Accepting the scenario and moving on. And last but certainly not least, Mugan. I feel like if I ever had to describe Mugan, he would be described as freedom. But I can also at the same time describe him as stupid youthfulness at the very same time. Because think about this time period, it's probably extremely hard for you to like have that quote-unquote freedom, or that freedom to necessarily do what you please. But what you do with that freedom is why I sort of call it stupid youthfulness, where Mugan inherently just kind of just does whatever he wants, does whatever a Mugan does.
Maybe I could learn to like this rough stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't foreplay.
I'm not letting you get away again.
You what?
In some of the worst ways possible and some of the most negative connotations when it comes to actually having freedom, whether that being A, murdering a shogun, B, also let's just say letting your desires take control, C, kind of just killing whoever you please and not thinking about any connotation or whatever might come to you in the future, and D, not learning simple things like learning how to fucking read. But surprisingly, there are some positives to it, which is why I also call it just regular freedom. Like for example, the way he fights inherently feels like it's freedom. It's not inherently the way of the Edo period. It's not the way of the samurai. Necessarily he has a sword in his hand, but he's using his feet. He's using metal on his feet to like have some type of kickboxing slash breakdance when it comes to him fighting. Or the way he blatantly speaks his mind, or he won't do anything unless he comes with a reward. And honestly, sometimes you just gotta fucking respect it. Ain't nothing in this world free. Mugan is the embodiment of that. A man who quite literally had to fight for everything he had and had to fight for everything that he wanted, making it almost primal in the way how he speaks and thinks about certain things. And speaking about Mugan fighting for everything that he wanted, going back to his origin, once we see like inherently why Mugan the way he is, you get a complete understanding of, yeah, anybody would pretty much be like this. With him being born on a prison island and him having to fend for himself, anybody would inherently be like Mugan. And these are also some of my favorite episodes in the show, where we inherently get to a shore, and it's with Mugan as well as Fu as well as Jin, and they get to the shore, right? And they find this girl that's over there that sees Mugan and starts crying like, oh my goodness, Mugan, you're actually alive. And this girl's name is Koza, and Koza basically was one of the people, or one of the 3 people that was with Mugan when it came to being on this prison island and having to fend for themselves. But the third person, Mukuro, is basically just the older brother for Koza, and he's basically a bastard. He inherently always did the most nastiest, disgusting thing to get off or to do anything on this island, whether to be get food or just to inherently, like I said, get off the fucking island itself. But the reason Koza is crying is because she thought he was dead, because they inherently betrayed him and left him out to basically be killed when it came to doing a supply run and trying to get more supplies for themselves. And if anybody can guess where this is going, basically Koza as well as Mukuro basically asked him to do one last job, and they definitely won't betray him 100%. They definitely won't do that when it comes to getting like $100 billion in gold. But before they inherently do this, Koza actually wants to be taken away. She's like, Mugan, please help me. I need to get out of the situation. My brother's an asshole. I don't want to be around him. He's literally one of the worst people alive. And Mugan says, no, I'm not the right guy for that. No, and he just walks away. The job goes through. Mugan basically gets betrayed again, and inherently people think Mugan's dead, even though again he's not dead again. But with Koza, another betrayal happens. Koza actually betrays Mukuro, the older brother. He actually wants him to die and to take all of the gold, but also with this other separate samurai. She actually sided with the samurai that was on the job with them the whole time and saying, hey, I want to actually betray my older brother. I want to take all this gold, and then I just want to be free. I want to be quote unquote unquote free, and plans to have the samurai basically take care of her the whole time. And Mugan actually appears to them at the last second when they're about to get away, and Mugan only kills the samurai and walks away. Now Kukuro is sitting there being scared that she's now by herself, but she obtained what she wanted the whole time: freedom, or freedom from a perspective of someone who understands the term of freedom for him. The idea is, right, at least this is what I got from it, is with Mugan, he himself knows freedom. He's always had to fend for himself. He's always had to do everything by himself initially. Kukuro never actually had to do that. She always had at least her brother to always help her, at least protect her, even though he was one of the worst human beings alive, but at least he still loved and appreciated his younger sister and always inherently looked out for her. Now she doesn't have anyone to inherently lean on. She always seems to lean on, or maybe even potentially want to say leech off of other people when it comes to having someone to protect her, someone to always be right beside her. Now she's by herself and she has obtained freedom. Now what is she going to do with it? Is she going to survive on her own, or she's going to die like the rest of the people that she has been with on this journey? And while I'm on the subject, that's pretty much one of my favorite things about this show, is that inherently they're not scared to give you a horrible ending, or an ending that inherently that one makes you think, or two, it's not just a happy ending, except for, you know, we're not going to talk about the actual real ending the last episode. We're not going to talk about that for now. Wait, we'll hold off on that. The show at times can inherently keep you guessing and make you think like, where is this inherently going to go? And that's how you know it's a good show. But moving on to some of the other stuff I did like from this is like the idea of the Sunflower Samurai, right? The Sunflower Samurai, they say multiple times, does he even exist? Do we know his whereabouts? Has anyone even seen him? Wait, how is he the Sunflower Samurai if it doesn't have a smell? A sunflower doesn't have inherently a smell. So what is it? What is a Sunflower Samurai? And by the time we get to the end of the series, it made me really like the name of a Sunflower Samurai, because one, the sunflower doesn't have a smell, and it's a person that they can't find. So I always equated the smell as well as finding someone the same thing. And just these people trying to find this one specific person, feeling like it's almost like a impossible mission, or it's one of those things where it's like you have to go super long on a long ass journey just to get or believe or get a whiff of what this actual person is, no pun intended. Also, they have a whole bunch of great side stories with a whole bunch of great side characters in these side stories, whether it be just a fun-loving baseball episode where we have a whole bunch of Yankees come down to Japan and they have a makeshift baseball game that is definitely not fucking baseball, or when Mugen takes down a whole counterfeit empire just for the love of. And just having some of these stories just could be completely fleshed out when it came to some of these side stories. But I do want to say some of the side stories, either A, wasn't fleshed out, or B, was a little bit weird. There's only a handful, like very small amount. Like for example, the Halloween episode. That one was, I felt like they wanted to say more or do more, but they just didn't have enough time, so they couldn't have the ability to do or say it. And I felt the same way with the religious episode, where inherently you have like a religious nut, and he basically is just trying to convince people or lie to people using religion. And I felt like it feels like it got rushed immediately and you sort of just go on ahead to the next episode. But another positive I do have to give this show is just straight up the beautiful homage that they do to basically sort of the black community, right? Where it comes to either what, graffiti, beatboxing, rapping, and sort of just all these beautiful beats that you do hear or themes that you do hear in the show, whether it be the actual opening or the themes you hear inside the show, actually peak. Feeling like it's a complete cultural respect regardless of if you talk about any of these subjects, because you always normally see like people respect their culture, but it's always nice to see someone else respect yours and treat it with love and care just like it's your own. And last but certainly not least, I have to talk about the ending, which I sort of implied earlier in the video. The ending itself specifically, it feels like it's supposed to like have them both die. Jin and as well as Mugen die. It's the build-up is quite literally insane, and the way you piece it together throughout the whole show, it feels like it's supposed to happen, especially when you understand their story of one, Mugen being so violent and not really caring about the past or future, just the present, what is happening in the here and now, and how that sort of catches up to him. Or even with Jin, even though necessarily he tried to save his other peers from a fate of being all assassins, he still inherently killed his master, and they even say lines like this:
The age of the samurai will most likely be coming to an end soon, and although I hate to admit this, it's become painfully apparent I was born into the wrong era, as were you.
Showing that the sun is coming down, like this is supposed to be kind of the end of things. But I really don't mind that at all. I'm fine with them having a perfectly good, all happy, we're all fine and okay, we're all gonna go a separate way ending, because they sort of deserve it. They did such a good job all the way through. I'll literally look the other way for the one time. But Other than that, thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye. Oh yeah, forgot. We are at the end of the video. I forgot to say I did want to give an update for the channel and how things are going. So yeah, sorry, my bad. You see like maybe like a 5-minute video. That was like maybe the last few weeks or the cases. I did start working a few months ago, so that's why it sort of downpoured a little bit. But I do inherently want to give at least bare minimum like maybe 10-minute videos here and there. But I had this one lurking in Horizon I wanted to do for a really long time. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead and do this. Let me get this out the way and get this out of my system, as well as hopefully everyone likes it and enjoys it. And also, it's been a fat minute since I did a really long video, like a 20-minute one. I usually stay away from that because it takes me way too long to get it done. But I really wanted to get this done, even though I knew it was going to take me 2 weeks. Unless maybe I wasn't working or some shit like that, then it probably would have taken me like a whole week, maybe week and a half, potentially, if I was going crazy for a second. Lastly, you know, sometimes I do have that motivation that just goes down from time to time, and sometimes I have to have it go up, or you can notice when it goes up where you see a lot more uploads, or you see a lot more shit just going on the channel. But yeah, sometimes I do get that little downpour motivation, but every single time I see everyone just like comment, or I see everyone like come subscribe, it does actually help me out. It does help my motivation go like fucking skyrocket to the roof for the cases. But I am very appreciative of everyone who watches my videos, sits and takes the time to do anything with it. So I like you. See you later. Goodbye.